So it is Boulanger then, right? Boulanger?
Yeah.
Boulanger.
Boulanger, if you say it in East Coast, but Boulanger. And then most people, there's a B-E-L spelling, so instead of B-O-U, it's B-E-L.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's Boulanger. Or
Boulanger. So where does the moniker Jax Falcone come from?
Ooh, that's a long story. You got time?
Yeah. Is there a Cliff Notes version of it?
Yeah, there is. Ultimately, it's just some stupid fucking alias I came up with that means very, very little, right? There may be a little bit of a genesis to it, but really nothing at all. But it's just some cool shit, you know? And so when I got on Twitter, I wasn't trying to be me. I was trying to be incognito. I was trying to get information, not give information. So I was like, I don't need anybody following me or anything like that. And so I just used an alias, got on Twitter, and started to rub elbows with people who thought I did know what I was talking about and did have something to offer. So then I was like, I'll change my name back to my real name. And people were not having it. They're like, where the fuck did Jax go? So I said, all right.
Yep.
I'm Jax. That's cool.
It's funny. It's, we come into Dynasty Fantasy Football and we always think when you first enter any space, you have this very simple view, and then as you start learning more and more, you realize the people that are experienced, they know nothing either,
right.
And then you can always tell. I always say at a fantasy football podcast, there's people that give great player takes, but I can always tell who plays in dynasty leagues,
right,
and who is just a player take person. And no shade to the player take people,
but you can tell.
Yeah, and I came across your podcast recently because I saw you on Matt Kelly's podcast, and that was the first time I saw you. And I was like, oh, let me check it out. And a lot of times I'll see someone on Mind of Mansion, and I'll go there, and I always say they were good on Mind of Mansion, but this podcast, it's not for me. Yours, it dives deep into the dynasty streets, and it's now appointment viewing for me, and
Thanks,
I certainly recommend.
Great.
Yeah, and I put all the links in the video description below. So what I want to talk about today was you invited me into a high stakes for me, $250 entry fee, superflex startup draft, and we're going to just talk through some basic strategies, your strategy, and that draft is still ongoing. It might be ongoing for the next 2 years at the rate we're going, but I don't mind the slow draft.
Me neither. Yeah, me neither. I think when you get in one of these, the people who are too much in a hurry, I mean, you signed up for it. The rules were in there, 8-hour clock, 30 round, 40 round, whatever it is. Get ready for it. That's what's going to be happening. If you're upset at someone who's 2 hours in, man, this is going to be a long few weeks for you. So, yeah, just buckle up and have fun with it. And, I just try and check my phone periodically through the day. And, obviously leave your notifications on. That's kind of one of the big ones. And then just have fun with it,
And every draft, doesn't matter if it's a $50 draft, $25 draft, or $350, or in our case, $250, the same cast of characters seems to enter every draft. There's always the hurry up guy, the OTC guy, and then there's the guy who gets annoyed with all those guys. And, our friend Matt Kelly got annoyed with the player Rhino, which we're going to put and if you want to see the draft board, it's linked in the video description below. We're going to put it up on there now. But what I was trying to tell Matt is there's an OTC hurry up and pick guy in every draft. This is normal. So this is not unusual, and you shouldn't get pissed off.
Yeah, well, and I could have seen. I had Chalk on, my partner at the Undroppables. I had him on the pod just this last week, and I said on the show, I was like, I could have seen this coming from a mile away. The Rhinos, Matt Kelly, scuffle, because Rhinos is the annoying guy in the draft. He's a great human being. I've met him personally on multiple occasions. He's just a wonderful person. But in Dynasty and in fantasy, when he's in this draft room, he's a heckler. He's going to push you. He's going to berate you. He's going to do all these things. And that's part of the game too. So I don't begrudge him. If you don't like that, that's your problem. I mean, you don't have to play with him. You could be upset. You could let it slide. You can do whatever you want, but he's going to be that. And Matt obviously throws his weight around and has a microphone that reaches thousands and thousands of people. So I could have known that this was going to happen, and it was beautiful. And Rhinos handled it like a champ, you got to admit.
Yeah. And there's a couple good detailed breakdowns of some podcasts. I'll have to link all the your podcast that you did last week, and then a bunch of the other guys, some Undroppables, right? They're part of the Undroppables crew. They did a podcast.
They did also. Actually.
Yeah, that was really
the Unending
good.
Rebuild. They did a good job just talking about their team, which is exactly what you're looking for, because I mean, if you're talking about everybody, it kind of gets a little confusing, but they talk specifically about their team. They split a team, 250 is a lot of money for some. It's not a lot for others. But I think in the fantasy football dynasty streets, I think it's mid-ish high stakes. Yeah. There's certainly some people playing for 10 G's and stuff like that. That's the real high stakes, but most leagues are 50 or $100, right? So I guess this is more than that.
Yep. What I always say is that you find out what your real dynasty rankings are when you're in a $250 league on the clock. I mean, that's
damn right.
Right. You're not being crazy. So what do you think? Just dynasty startup season is here. I was going to say it's almost over for me because I've done 4 or 5 of them already. But for a lot of people, they're like, okay, I want to get in one of these things. They're doing their best ball. Yeah. And for our purposes, we're going to talk in terms of superflex and the tight end premium, whatever that means to you. Superflex, 2 quarterbacks. But what do you think is the most common mistake that even experienced dynasty players and new players make in these dynasty startup drafts?
Well, I guess I'll start from the first mistake you can make, which is to not check the scoring and the settings and the rules of the league. The first thing you do when you even think about entering a league is find out what the rules are. Find out what the scoring settings are. Find out what the roster constructions are. Find out all that stuff. Because if there's something about that doesn't really line up with your tendencies, that could hurt you. There was an issue with that sort of early on in our draft, if you remember. And a very experienced player didn't kind of notice one little thing about the scoring and got a little pissed off. I love it, by the way. We're all sort of, competitive, and I thought he was going to leave the league, and he was like, I was nowhere close. I was just ranting and raving. It was great.
And just to not be cryptic, we won't name the person, but the quarterbacks favor accurate. The quarterback scoring favors accurate quarterbacks, and they spent a high pick on a quarterback that has accuracy issues.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, we talk about Konami code and running in quarterbacks, and this league is plus 0.2 for completions, minus 0.3 for incompletions, 6 points for passing touchdowns, minus 3 points for interceptions, minus 3 points for pick 6. So when you put all that together, and plus 0.4 for rushing first down, so there's a lot to sort of uncover there. So you kind of want to almost dive in and say, okay, well, what does that mean for these quarterbacks and et cetera? What is positional scarcity going to look like? In addition, this league also is start 3 wide receivers, 4 flex. So you can start up to 7 wide receivers, really 8, I guess, if you want to put one in the super flex. But at the end of the day, that's also important to understand that you're going to need to draft depth pieces potentially over high upside dart throws, in those mid to later rounds, because you're going to need a starter. You can't start a guy who doesn't put up any points. Marvin Mims, if he doesn't play, might be a better pick than DJ Chark. I'm making this up. But DJ Chark is more likely to sort of be starting in your flex. So it creates different, like I'd never draft DJ Chark over Marvin Mims. But here you're almost like, I got to kind of think about stuff like that because of how these lineups set up. And again, if you're playing for $20, you can be like, I'll just push it into the future. I'll just go, total rebuild early on. Fuck DJ Chark. But when you're playing for $250, you want to win that first year. So then you lean a little bit more towards win now. So there's all these things that are factoring into your decision making.
Yeah, you said it perfectly right. Like the ultimate dynasty decision is someone like Tyler Lockett, 30 years old, producer, versus your favorite rookie wide receiver, right?
Jaden Reed, Mingo, whoever, right? You're like,
yeah, right.
Lockett's definitely going to beat their asses, but he's dead in a year or two. So, yeah, you're exactly right.
So, yeah, because in any dynasty rankings, you're going to have Mims above him. But it's like when I'm on the clock, I took Lockett in those situations because my money at stake was in the game. So let's talk about your draft a little bit here. Sure. As I have the board up on there, and if you're listening on the audio podcast where we get a bulk of, and by the way, we had someone ask in the chat, why are you drafting this early? This is a dynasty startup. If you're new to dynasty fantasy football, this is actually prime season. This is where we, you can do a dynasty draft in August as well, but usually once. Yeah, and you can, and we probably will. But this is when the rookies get infused in the pool. It's dynasty players have a sickness, so
we sure do.
Yep,
we sure do. And you can draft the dynasty league at any time during the league. I mean, any time during the year, because it is forever. It's perennial. It doesn't ever stop. It never stops. It just keeps going. So at the end of the day, it's like That's pretty cool. I didn't know you could do that.
Yes. You just click on the person. Yeah, you click on the person and it shows you all the
Well,
picks.
you can kind of see. Look, in a super flex dynasty draft, you need quarterbacks, and you can see how fast they go. Boom, 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 right off the top. And an elite young quarterback is huge. So obviously I felt like Trevor Lawrence was the last of it. I love pick 7 because I really think those 7 that you see right there are the top 7 players in the dynasty rookie draft, super flex. So I knew I was getting one of those top 7, and I was really just trying to get another one. I did trade up to get Dak Prescott. Not everybody loves that move, and I bet you not a lot of your listeners like that move. But I do think there's sort of a bit of a tier break after Dak. Again, remember the scoring. 6-point passing touchdown, -3 for interception, -3 for pick 6, and then basically points for completion percentage. Dak hits all those. He's not as much of a rusher, but he's going to give me real efficient passing production. And he could get back to that sort of elite high-end passing numbers that we saw a couple years ago before the ankle. So, look, I feel really good about having those 2. And then it's super tight end premium, which is why TJ Hawkinson goes so early.
Can I just want to just say something about what you said about Dak is that usually when people, the league hates the pick, especially this early on, is when I already know it's a good pick because when you started getting hate for the Dak Prescott pick, I don't think, like you said, people are fully understanding how not everyone in this league fully understands that they're not going to be able to acquire a quarterback that has 3 years of insulation. Right. Dak probably has 4, right? Yeah. This is the opposite of buying a car. It's that as soon as you drive, as soon as the Superflex draft is over, the price goes up, not down. Yes. There's no cheaper place to get quarterbacks than in the startup draft because if you want to spend your first round pick to try to get a quarterback, the best you're doing is probably like Jimmy Garoppolo if he's healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can trade for almost anything I want, but I definitely can't trade for Jalen Hurts. I couldn't give up any of the other things I have to get him. None of it. I could give him all my first round picks and, all these good. There's no deal that's happening. Nobody's giving that up, and I'm not giving up Trevor Lawrence or Dak. I can't do it
ever.
It's just too important. So in these leagues, you really have to find someone who's completely rebuilding, who's completely crapped out, who's willing to potentially sell a quarterback. And even then, they're going to think, look, I'll sell anything else, but I got to hang on to my quarterbacks,
Right. I mean, the most you're going to ever sell, like if someone offers you, if Mac Jones, you have him as your third QB, and if he comes out and let's say he has a 280-yard game, 2 games in a row with 2 touchdowns and no picks, right? Like 2 really good games.
Yeah.
That's the guy, if you even want to sell him, that you will. And think about that. Right now, Mac Jones, do you realize him and Ryan Tannehill are ADP 31 and 32 in Superflex startups? I mean, those are the last 2 guys. And even then, you're probably like, do I really want to sell this guy? What about bye weeks, all that stuff? So
bingo.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to get rid of Mac Jones, actually, because, and I almost have a little bit of a rule. I don't know if it's that strong a rule, but it's pretty close. I almost never sell a quarterback in a Superflex Dynasty League unless I'm getting a quarterback back.
Yes, like the pivot down.
Yeah, I mean, almost always. I mean, if I'm selling whomever, I just need one back just to make sure I'm not losing the net quarterback that I have on my
right.
My
like,
roster.
For example, if you're going to sell your, let's say like at some point, because I have Daniel Jones as my QB3. Let's say he's off to a hot start and somebody just needs it. All right, give me, I'm just trying to think of Aaron
Desmond
Rodgers.
Ritter.
There you go. I was going to say Aaron Rodgers plus a pick. Yeah,
sure. Aaron Rodgers, you get the younger kid. That's right. There it is. Yeah, I mean,
something.
Like
all right, so we share a brain on this one because obviously I had a similar strategy. Whereas I started with I was fortunate enough to pick in the top. I took Jalen Hurts in this one, and then I was trading up for the quarterback. You didn't. Deshaun Watson and Dak Prescott. Dak being the safer one, Deshaun Watson having the lower floor. Obviously,
that was the other one, by the way.
Right.
Maybe Kyler, but again, Kyler is such a 0 for this year that it's really hard to invest in him so early.
Yeah, always fading injury optimism in fantasy football will always make you money, and especially 250, man. I mean, to me, that's it's I could afford it, but I don't want to lose it either. And the prize in this one, there's one prize. The winner take all. So you're basically handing in your 250 for the upside of Kyler. I don't know. I mean, there's
right.
Another pick I wanted to ask you about in this particular draft, and I'll post the board again, is that Tua went in the second round, and I understand it. Yeah, I understand it, but do you in most of the drafts I've done, he's gone in like the 4th round of these Superflex startups. Because the one hit away threat. I mean, are you so just give me the other side of that? Like, I'm nervous that if I draft Tua in the second round, he gets a hit. I mean, we're talking a minimum of 6 games for him, right? It was a concussion, and maybe the rest of the season if it's another one where he has the stinky leg.
Yeah, oof.
Yeah,
bro, that was so bad. I remember him being out and thinking, why are they putting back in? I don't even want to go there, but
yeah,
Brandon Cooks had a similar situation, and he sort of played past it and hasn't happened again. But I remember fading Brandon Cooks for those very same reasons, thinking, man, he's a hit away from being out of this league, and he was able to survive it. So I'm with you that Tua was that was the tier for me. Tua, I think, is probably, if I knew they were both going to be healthy for the next 5 years, I'd have taken Tua ahead of Dak, right?
Yeah.
But the injury risk and the concussion situation is kind of an issue. So yeah, that was the reason that I moved up for Dak. But I think Tua in this type of league, I mean, the upside's there. He's going to start and play, and really the only out that you have on the downside is that concussion scare.
Yeah, and that's a major one, though, right?
It is.
Yeah, because now you have to. I mean, you have to basically proactively push up Mike White. I don't think these guys did that.
I'm not
in this particular draft. No, they have Desmond Ridder, and
did they get Mike White. You really need to prioritize him.
Yeah, that's what I would do. I would have, if you're going to be bullish on Tua, which you should, if you just going for the healthy.
I agree with you. Get Mike White. Yep.
Yeah, and push him up like to QB like 29, right? Like take him ahead of Mac Jones. Again, not that that's a good pick. Mac Jones is the better pick.
Or just make sure you take him before your league mates, because probably no one else is taking him ahead of Mac Jones, but just take him ahead of when everybody else would be even considering him. Right then, you take him. But that opens up another point, which is in redraft. Don't ever, well, not ever, but basically never handcuff. In Dynasty, feel free to handcuff because there's no waiver wire. There's no way for you to replace him. The only way for you to replace Tua if he gets hurt is trade or on your roster, because there's definitely not going to be any starting quarterbacks available anywhere else. Whereas in redraft, you're basically betting against yourself if you take your handcuff, so it's totally different in Dynasty. So yes, your strategy to handcuff your quarterback in Dynasty, smart. If you're doing that in redraft or any other, you're probably not very smart.
So you traded away your 3rd round pick to move up, and that was part of the Dak deal.
Yeah.
You ended up landing TJ Hawkinson in this, and this is a pretty heavy premium league for tight ends. But
yes,
what I was going to ask you is, most tight end premium leagues are 1.5, just like the FFPC.
Yeah.
Does that move the needle for you? Are you going to push up tight ends in a start 1.5? I guess really what the question is, when do you advise Dynasty players what level of premium to start thinking about the tight ends as like low end wide receiver ones?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't have a specific. I haven't done the research where I can have a really smart answer. But for me, I don't want to reach for anything. And I feel like even Kyle Pitts. We think about Kyle Pitts and like everybody was going gaga. He was going 101 or in non-superflex. I mean, I think Trevor was going ahead of him, but people were making the case for Kyle Pitts to go very, very high in their rookie drafts, his rookie season. Certainly in tight end premiums, I saw him go 101. Over the quarterbacks. I think all of that was a mistake. I think, so for me, tight ends are hard prospects. Once they're there, once they've arrived, you see Mark Andrews and Kelsey, it's like, yeah, man, I mean, they're as secure as any other player. And if the premium creates a situation where their sort of projectable points is as good as a high-end wide receiver, yeah, you should be taking him with those high-end wide receivers or ahead of them because of scarcity.
Yeah, I mean, just the 2022 season, Travis Kelce in 1.5 beat Justin Jefferson, the wide receiver 1 in total fantasy points. And
but you got to take Travis Kelce and put him on his own island, because every other tight end doesn't do that. I think the difference between 1 and 2 was greater than the difference between 2 and 20. Tight end 1 to 2 to tight end 2 to 20. In other words, he was just a whole different beast. He is a whole different beast, and when he moves on, there won't be a next Travis Kelce. There'll just be someone else that isn't quite Travis Kelce, because his run of 6 years now of either tight end 1 or 2,
6 out of the last 7 years,
tight end 1 or something like that. Yeah, it's incredible.
1.
It's unbelievable. So that's not likely to ever happen again. I mean, it's very inconceivable. Even just injury. Think about how lucky he's been with injuries. Knock on wood. I mean, so every bit of what Travis Kelce has done has been outlier. To get Patrick Mahomes, I mean, that's also, I mean, everything, all of it is just ridiculous.
So the great tight end, by the way, where do you have him in your rankings? Where is Travis Kelce in Dynasty startup league? Just call it like a small premium. Like, so is he tight end what?
To me, he's still tight end 1, and that's kind of
in Dynasty. I love it. I love the call. I love it.
You know why? Because why not? If you're playing for real money and you have Travis Kelce, you win. And what tight end is going to be more valuable than him? You know, it's like I did trade Travis Kelce away in a tight end premium league toward the end of last year. I think I traded for Mark Andrews in a first.
Okay, well, you got the heir apparent.
Right. But like the reason that the other guy was willing to buy for such a heavy price is because Travis Kelce wins you money. Right. Like, you know, what are we playing for? You know, roster baiting or winning money? And you know,
there's actually a clinical term for it when you just want to load up your roster with young players. It's called sexy roster syndrome.
Yeah,
SRS. People are. I mean, Dynasty play. I'm sure you've seen this poll out there, but and I forget, Jordan McNamara told me about it, right?
Yes.
Like, what's your favorite part of Dynasty? Winning was only like 37%. Like trading was like 32%. You know, draft picks was another like 15%. So winning, even though it was number one, was just over a third. So that brings me to another piece of what I want to talk to you about is that in most leagues, you know, you have the perpetual rebuilders, Scott.
Yeah.
And in like any given year, you're not really competing with 11 other people in your 12-person league. So
that's a fact.
Right. So how do you handle the whole, like, you know, I call it, you know, everyone has the win now and productive struggle. I call it the win now and win never strategy. So
Sure.
Is there a needle to thread? Have you tried productive struggle, which is basically punting year one? Is that something that you advise Dynasty players to do?
Absolutely. You know, my number one strategy is to trade back as many times as I possibly can. Trade back as small, you know, I mean, if I can trade from the 1-2 to the 1-3 and get value, and then trade from the 1-3 to the 1-7, you know, trade it back as little as possible and reap as much value as I possibly can, and just try and load up on 2024 in this case, or future first round picks, is definitely the best way to accrue value. You know, people will give up future value with ease. You know, in other words, a 2024 first, maybe like they're like, yeah, it's fine. Let's get this guy. Let's make this happen. I want to go from the 2-3 to the 1-7. I'm in. Let's go. They'll do that, right? But then if the 24 first were on the clock, they'd be like, bro, this is all of it. You see what I'm saying? You see what I mean?
The psychology of when the calendar, the timing and the calendar. That's how
people are. So you prey upon that just human emotion. And by doing that, somehow or another, but here's the sneaky part of that strategy. It's not really punting year one. It's just be willing to cede that pick. Like, I'm on the clock with 107. Trevor Lawrence is there. I'm willing to trade back. Now, if I would have done that, and I probably should have, okay, and I'd have moved all the way back to where Tua is somehow, you know, maybe even 2 moves.
Oh, move back like a full round from like 1-7 to like 2-11 or something.
Bingo.
Like that.
Move all the way back through, and then somehow I was able to pick up a 24 first and a couple mid picks and yada yada, whatever I got to get there. I still really had Tua or Trevor. Well, who knows? Maybe Tua is better. You know, but I got paid for my risk to move back. Now, why didn't I do that? Well, it's 250, and I probably punted my strategy a little bit too. Also, I felt like the prices were a little bit interesting. People weren't as willing to pay up to move around. They were a little bit sitting on the sidelines for exactly the same reasons. They didn't want anybody to really pull this off. And, you know, because we had one person in the league who kind of did that a little bit and wasn't really able to fully capitalize on that strategy. And his team it's all right. He's got only a 2 or 3.
Which team is it? Who's
Titties.
That team? Okay, Titties. So Titty, great name, by the way.
I mean,
so right. So he ended up
be political.
Yeah, no.
One team. I don't know who he was. You know?
One team So he has Patrick Mahomes, and then he traded out of round 2 and round 3. And so where do you think? Here, let me put that team up on the board. Sure. Actually, you know what? We're going to review that team in a second, Scott. Are you a Vegas guy? You like Vegas?
Love Vegas. Let's go, baby.
All right. So, what's it called? We're going on the RotoWire trip in a few weeks, but anytime you want to go, you let me know. I'll meet you there. But this podcast today is sponsored by Circa. You've been to Circa Sports?
Yeah.
I mean, To me, that's the best place. I mean, it's still pretty new. It's like 3 years old, but they are running a fantasy football contest. So I'm just going to tell everybody about that. Listen up, even though I'm giving you the commercial read, this is one of the sickest contests. So they're running the ultimate fantasy football draft, and it can only take place in Vegas at Circa Resort and Casino. And they want to bring your whole league for the ultimate draft experience. So this is how it works, Scott. You sign up. There's a link in the video description below. It's at circalasvegas.com. And again, just look at the link in the video or in the audio podcast. And your whole 12-person league gets to have the draft at the Cabana at the Stadium Swim, plus limo to and from the airport, a welcome party at the Legacy Club, a booth at the world's largest sports book, and more. A prize package worth over $8,000. There's no better place to draft. 21 and over. CircaLasVegas.com for more information. They're giving you like all this, like a draft board and announcing, and they're going to give you like, I think it's $500 per league mate in drink credits. I mean,
we'll go through that quickly, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
Yeah. So you should sign up. Go in the link.
I'm going to.
Yeah.
Is it going to look weird if I win?
No. Like I signed up. I found out I can even participate. So I've signed up all of my leagues already. You know,
I'm going to have all my. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to text and message all of my league mates, and they're all going to sign up too. Just
as they should. As they should. No, this is
we're going. We're getting it.
Yeah. So
those of you listening, you're not going. We're going. So you better sign up because I'm going.
So yeah, I'm going back there in a few weeks. We're just doing our annual trip there, which is always fun. So and you're not too far because you're on the West Coast. And so what is it? How far of a drive is that from where you are?
5-6 hours.
Okay, that's not bad at all.
That's not bad. Yeah, we can actually fly in. It's about a 30-minute flight.
Perfect. All right, we're talking about our $250 Superflex Startup League, and I'm here with Jax Falcone. Jax, tell them really quick about the podcast that you're doing right now, and then also you're bringing your podcast over to the Player Profiler platform.
Network, yeah.
Is that an additional podcast, or is that that's the same one that's being brought over to that network? So just tell people about that.
I'm over we started the Undroppables, I don't know how many years ago, but we're sort of still in our infancy. I'm at about 137 episodes of The Undrafted. You noticed the show. Matt has noticed the show. Matt asked me to put the show on his podcast network over at Player Profiler. We're happy to share it with him and let it be part of his podcast network. And it helps us, gives us some growth on the show as well. So great partnership there, and we're happy to be there. But the show is great, man. It's a long format. We usually go an hour or two. I'll have a new guest every week. It's great. We, JJ Zachariason, Scott Barrett recently, and Evan Silva, and all sorts of great guests, Matt Kelly. And then sometimes it'll just be me and Chalk. Not that Chalk's the best, by the way.
Well, but, this was going to be
we do all sorts of cool shows.
Yeah, this was going to be, it's great when you have guests. I have guests on this podcast too, but just from listening to the episode with you and Chalk, it sounds like two guys hanging out talking about like the nuances of Dynasty. That's what I want. And again, have guests, do all that. It's great. Again, I always say great for the thumbnail. I have Jax Falcone on my thumbnail today, right?
Sure.
It's awesome, but it's funny because Chalk sounds like he's using like a bad microphone, and I like it. Usually I don't like bad audio. I love it because you're on this clear,
it wasn't his microphone. It was that he was doing shots of whiskey. So it was devolving during the show. That was really it. It was just...
I guess as someone that's I listen to a ton of Dynasty content, and I'm through it quick. This is a podcast for people that are hardcore to Dynasty, that love the nuances, and it's going to be appointment viewing. It is appointment viewing now for me, and I highly recommend Jax's podcast, which again his Twitter is linked in the video description or audio description below. Everything, all his content's on there. So
thanks,
if you're looking for it's sincere. If you're looking for a new podcast, and people ask me all the time, what do you listen to? This is one that I listen to.
Thanks,
all right.
Brother.
All right. We're moving on. We're talking about our Superflex Dynasty startup.
We're talking about titties.
Right. We're talking about titties. Not the breasts. We're talking about the player. Right. Yes. So here, let me put him up on the board.
I would never. Never.
So where do you think? So he took Pat Mahomes at the 1-1. Remember, this is third round reversal. And if you're following in the audio, you could just click the board in the video, in the audio description. So where do you think he went wrong here? Because you thought that he missed on the strategy he was trying to execute.
Well, the only problem, he did get 24 firsts, and he does have Patrick Mahomes, and his team isn't awful, but it's like he I don't know, man. I don't know that it's necessarily put together in a way where he's definitely going to compete next year too. So that's the only reason that the strategy didn't necessarily hit hard. Is like normally I like to have, like I would have liked to have seen more picks there and maybe more trade backs and just keep moving back. I don't know that he necessarily got all the way there. Yeah, just for me, it didn't happen. You know, one of the things that, so if I'm going to do a trade back strategy in this particular league, we also start 12, right? So it's like a quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, 4 flex, and a super flex. Start 12. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So that means up to round 12, those are still starters. Now, normally if you're drafting, you know, it's like round 10 is your starters. I mean, start 8 to 10. Normally, this is a pretty deep starting. You know, 12 times 12 is 150 starters. So anyway, long story short, I want a lot of picks in the top 10 to 12 rounds if I'm trading back. You know, I would have liked to have seen him move a couple of his 14, 15, 18 round picks into the top 12 when he made those trades, just to kind of clump up some guys that will still help him. You know, you look in the rounds 8 to 12, you just kind of look at the names there. I mean, I'm looking now, you know, it's like you can see a lot of, you know, useful players still. Mike Evans, right? Mike Evans is there. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Lockett.
I put on the top line for you there.
You see what I'm saying? So at that point, you can still get some pretty solid producers that can help you win now and, you know, get that the future picks and the young players up top. So I thought that was kind of, you know, one of the things that threw me off a little bit about Titty's draft, but he tried. And that was the point, is that nobody was really ceding too much value. Everybody was kind of holding back. So I said, you know what, if that's the case, I'm just going to basically stick and pick. But it's a murderer's row. I mean, you have some real big high stakes players, some guys who are excited to be in this league and not looking to lose this league. They were taking it very serious. So nobody was just, you know, throwing around 24 first. If they were going to give you a 24 first, they weren't going to give up much more in terms of value. Everybody was pretty stingy, I guess is my point.
Right. You should be getting a top 25, top 30-ish player when you trade away your first. Like there should be some real value extraction there. But hey, the market is what the market is, right?
Bingo. That's the other thing in a dynasty league, right? You got to play the table too. I mean, you know, if everybody's throwing things around, collect it. If nobody's throwing it around, you know, maybe you got to go the other way.
Yeah, people always ask, where should the quarterbacks go in a super, like newer players ask me, where should they go in a super flex? And, you know, I always tell them about the top 7. And then I say, where's the market? I mean, I would have taken, in our draft, I would have taken Daniel Jones a round ahead, but I sensed that he was not valued the same way by this room. In fact, people thought at like 4.8 where I took him, it was a reach. I mean, he threw in the league where completion or accuracy is valued. I think he only threw like 5 interceptions, you know, and he cleaned up the turnover. So let me ask you that: who's the quarterback there? If you're going to go like, you know, like in 1 QB leagues, we get our hero running back and then we wait. Who is? I think that's a viable strategy in Superflex. Get your anchor quarterback and wait. Yeah. Who are some of the guys that you would tell Superflex dynasty players that you can get outside of the top 10 or 12 that have a chance to literally be in the top 10 or 8?
That's a good question. Daniel Jones is one of them, although he's a little bit of smoke and mirrors. You know, the thing with right? I mean, you look at his passing stats and they really didn't get it that much better. Yeah, even this last year. But what did get better was his rushing stats. All hail Brian Daboll, apparently, I guess, right?
And also the contract insulation. He's guaranteed to be a starter for 2 years. Guaranteed.
I was going to say 2. Don't get ahead of yourself. I was hopeful that you weren't going to say more than that.
No, 2. I'm realistic. I'm realistic. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people are like, you got the contract. He's, you know, it's like.
No. Yeah, no, 2. I mean, outside of a few guys, who's really guaranteed any position, any player, like besides Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, like who's really guaranteed more than 2 years ever?
No, I mean, I had Scott Barrett on the show, and I thought because Russell Wilson's contract seemed pretty onerous, but he pointed out that they can get out of him post June 1 next year, so basically a year from today. And it's true, apparently. I was like, it looked very, very onerous, but when you actually look at the post June 1, 2024 stuff, it's like, actually, this is a make or break for Russell Wilson. A lot of people may be like thinking, look, if I could sell Russell Wilson, I would do so, is I guess what I'm saying. If you could sell Russell Wilson plus something to move up to something better, I think Russell Wilson might be toast. And I think that Sean Payton will have basically a tryout year for Russell. And if not, they're going to move on and figure something else out.
I was going to say that if things don't go well in the first 3-4 games, Jarrett Stidham's going to play.
He might. It might be. They could move on from him, a la Derek Carr. Remember this last year? Derek Carr was like, all of a sudden they're like, yeah, you don't play anymore, and he like went home. Like he wasn't even in the locker room.
Right. Remember, Russell Wilson was on the opposite situation. They gave what was the guy's name? Matt Boyle. Matt Flynn.
BC.
Matt Flynn, the big contract, and then they just said, no, you wait over here. Our rookie, our third round rookie is going to play. So it's funny that it's happening to him.
It can happen.
Is Jordan Love one of those guys? The wait on QB outside the top 15 that you realistically could see as top? I mean, no sure thing. He could be a 0, but if you're playing that game, is he one of the guys that we're going to consider there, or you're just not? You're not advising.
This is funny because I was the anti Jordan Love guy coming out of the draft. I thought he was a fade completely. Even if he went to a different team, I thought his interception percentage was too high. I didn't see him as a first round talent. I was out on Jordan Love, and people know that. Chalk knows that about me. So we were having a conversation, and I pushed back a little bit on Jordan Love, and he goes, whoa, what the hell is this? Why are you all of a sudden defending him? And I said, well, he's not that person anymore. He's 3 years removed. I don't know if he's learned anything. I don't know if he's gotten any better, but it's possible that he's gotten better. I mean, in other words, I thought he had 0% chance, not zero, but pretty close to 0% chance of succeeding fresh out of college based off of his profile. But that profile is in the distance. And if he's been able to improve himself, I mean, it's possible that he's improved and he's a different player now. So I don't know exactly what he is. He was a very scary prospect coming out of college, so I didn't really like that. Again, the interception percentage is one of the things, if you look at that number, if it's over a certain threshold, almost none of the first-round quarterbacks with a high interception percentage in college, almost all of them fail. There's very, very few who've ever done anything. Excuse me.
Yeah, I appreciate you powering through. I know you're a little under the weather, but you're
I've got allergies, But
okay.
So the thing about it is like, I think for him, who knows what he is now, right? So he's a black box. He could be a boat. But I think at the end of the day, I'm still out, especially because I think his ADP has really risen to a point where I'm like, I can get a lot of more short. Like, look, Mac Jones or Jordan Love. It's like,
I mean, the market's telling you Jordan Love. The market says, yeah.
So for me, I'm out. I was so happy to get Mac Jones where I got him. I mean, I'm not that sure about Mac Jones either, Alan.
Well, he was good his rookie year. I mean, last year, do we give him the Trevor Lawrence-ish mulligan because the coaching, it wasn't Urban Meyer bad, but I mean, we all know that the Patriots' offensive setup last year was not good.
They had no offensive coordinator.
Right. They actually had a negative EV one because they had a defensive coordinator that was a bad one in there as the offensive coordinator.
Incredible that was what Bill Belichick thought was a good idea. Yeah, so I think with Bill O'Brien coming in there, they've added a couple of weapons. They might add another one to DeAndre Hopkins. I haven't looked at my phone. Has he made anything happen yet?
No, not yet.
It's possible. They were one of the favorites. I don't know how I'd feel about all that from a lot of different angles, but I think as a Patriots fan only, I'd be very, very pleased with that.
All right. Why is Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave getting the Kings treatment? Actually, I know why, but why is Christian Watson not getting it? Because he broke out too. It's just that he was hurt, and then as soon as he was just inserted into the starting lineup around week 10, from week 10 to the end of the season, that's about 2 months. Wide receiver 9. So I understand why he would be not maybe third of those guys, but I mean he's a multiple round afterthought. So. Christian Watson's I can't believe nobody else sees it guy. I know that in redraft he's going in the 4th or 5th round. It's not like he's being ignored, but I was on the clock with a real dynasty dilemma, Cooper Kupp or Christian Watson, and I chose Watson knowing I'm going to get outproduced this year at least, maybe next year too. So Christian Watson as far as a sophomore breakout type.
I think some of it is still the profile, the small school guy coming out of nowhere. Some of the rest of it for me is obviously Wilson and Olave were first-round picks. He was a second-round pick. It's not the end of the world.
But
they come from
a
big school. He comes from a small school. He was T. Higgins area. That's right. Yeah. Michael Pittman area. Right.
Right.
But I think the other thing, Garrett Wilson, I think garnered 147 targets. In a bad offense, still produced and was a target earner. So I think that's now they say, okay, well, when he had good quarterback play, Garrett Wilson was great. Even when he didn't have good quarterback play, he was earning targets. Olave was one of the, I think he was number 1 in unrealized air yards or something like that. I mean, he was downfield collecting targets. And I think a little bit of Christian Watson was touchdown production, and touchdown production can be a little Chase Claypool-y, right? So if you're chasing a little bit of Chase Claypool, you don't want to do so with Christian Watson. I'm not saying he's Chase Claypool. That's not what I'm suggesting. I think he's somewhere in between there. But I think for those reasons, you kind of look at him and say, okay, he's a level down. Is he too many levels down? Well, for you, he is. For me, I'm still a little bit skeptical. But, man, he looked really good out there, didn't he?
Oh, I mean, amazing. And, the sample of one, very small sample size. But football is a small sample size. A whole season's small, right? Yep. That one game with Jordan Love, it was 4 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. So it's better that it was than it wasn't. And again, when Cooper Kupp puts up, 112 yards and 2 touchdowns in week 1, I'm going to sick. But, in a league that has staying power, I mean, this is one of those leagues where people know each other, and it's, it was tough to draft the 30-year-old versus the 24-year-old who I think, I was like, can he get in that tier next year? 18 months from now, is Christian Watson thought of like that? It could be, right?
Right.
So it's just the type of bet you want to make. So you put your chip on one and you hope that it lands on your color, I
mean, you obviously like Christian Watson ahead of George Pickens, Jamison Williams, and it's like I do too. So I'm there with you. Do I like him as much as, I mean, I don't like him as okay, so there it is, Treylon Burks or Christian Watson. Yeah, I know everybody's going to have Watson ahead, but I'm not so sure that
I have
I prefer Burks.
No conviction. Like, I have Watson, but I'm like, and normally people argue that and they say, Watson, no, Burks. Like, I'm open to being wrong on this because, I mean, it's how many.
I have a saying on the show, and it's be ready to be wrong. And if you're ready to be wrong, that means that you could easily, I prefer Burks to Watson, but I'm 100% ready to be wrong. So I could easily shift that and change gears and be Watson over Burks as long as I see more stuff. I had Burks as a top three receiver in that draft. Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Treylon Burks, and I had Christian Watson further down. So I'm moving him up, but I just don't know how high to move him up. Am I still blind to Christian Watson? Maybe, right? Probably, but I don't know.
Yeah. I want to talk about trading for a minute because, it's quick for me to see who understands how trades get done. And I have people come to me all the time. Oh, I can't make a trade in my league. I can't do this. I can't do that. I'm like, well, send me some of the trades you've offered people and I'll let you know why. So I want you to give a couple trading tips from everything of how to approach someone. Well, I'm not even going to muddy the water. Yeah. What's the best way to get a trade done? And let's say in an existing league where you need a running back, you think you're like a top 4 or 5 team. You need a running back specifically because they're harder to get in Dynasty sometimes. So how do you go about doing? What's a couple general tips you can give?
Well, if you need a running back, you probably shouldn't be trading for one.
Interesting.
If you know what I mean? In other words, in Dynasty, your team should be able to almost dominate with or without running backs in your running back slots. And then running backs are the luxury that push you over the top. Matter of fact, if you did listen to the show I did with Chalk, we talked about this extensively on the last Undrafted show about how to get trades done and how to communicate with your league. And I think some of the cliff notes from that is like, just send offers. Now, there's a don't spam, right? Because there is a guy in one of my leagues that has now ruined his reputation with everybody as being a shit poster. He basically just sends awful trades all day long. Like, he's super busy sending awful trades, and everybody's just kind of like makes fun of him. And you don't want to be that.
How do you respond to an awful trade, by the way? Do you ignore it? Do you auto delete it, or do you send back like a equally worse one?
Never do that. Don't ever do that. That's the worst thing to do.
How does Jax Falcone respond to, like, let's say a stranger in one of these leagues sends you, something ridiculous? Then we'll get back to your trading tips.
How decline it and go on with your life. Okay. Like, what is the problem?
Well, they insult your intelligence, and then you get pissed, and then they get pissed.
Or did they insult their intelligence?
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So now, hear me out. If they sent you a shitty trade, like one that's super in their favor, well, there's one of two things. They either think that you're dumb, which is fine. Let them think that. What difference does that make? I don't need to. Here's the thing. My job is not to educate the other league members. Matter of fact, if he thinks all that stupid shit, perfect. That means that I know that he's an idiot, and he thinks that whatever he thinks about me, it doesn't matter. But my job is not to educate him, because if I educate him, look at the trade value, look at this ranking, and he's like, oh shit, wow, now he's getting better. Why are you making him better? He might send you the and this happens a lot, the person that sends you the shitty trade offer, what that's way in their favor, will also send you the one where you just go, oh, click accept, because they're so stupid they messed it up. Yeah. They sent you a trade where, so let them keep coming. Why am I going to make him not want to send me trades? He sends me, there's a guy sending me multiple trades all day long. That's all he does. I'm fine with it. I'm very nice to him. I decline all his stupid ass trades, and I try to counter sometimes. And he's kind of infuriating because when you counter with certain people, they'll be like, they'll send back something equally absurd. Right. Again, I don't get upset about this because at the end of the day, that just shows me that that person might be the fish in the league. And I want them to have, discourse with me.
Right. I always say don't publicly shame people because you're going to want to, especially when you're not involved in the
scenes. Let it go. It's cool.
Right.
He's your buddy.
Totally.
Let him be your buddy.
Right.
What's the problem? You're going to get emotionally upset about a guy who sent you a Patrick Mahomes for a second-round pick. You go, how dare you?
Right.
What decline? Move on. It didn't happen. If he really thinks that, he's sending that to everybody else. Let someone else tell him he's an idiot. You're like, hey, buddy, I thought it just didn't work for me. And
how does the saying go? Never argue with a fool in public. Onlookers won't be able to tell who is who, right?
Bingo.
Yeah.
Well said, sir.
So we have a in another high stakes league that I'm in. It's like a 250er. We have a rule, a trade match rule. I'm curious of what your thoughts are on this. Is that any trade that goes down, like on Sleeper, you could set it to auto go through or pending. So we have all trades set for pending. Trade goes up. Me and you, we make a trade. Patrick Mahomes for Daniel Jones and a first, right?
Yeah.
It goes up on the board pending. All other 10 league mates have 24 hours to match the trade with each person. So let's say you offered Daniel Jones in a first. I had Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. I can't add to or take away from Patrick Mahomes. You can't add to or take away from Daniel Jones. So people, and it basically, this rule it prevents the stars from getting traded for under market. Some people love this rule. Some people hate this rule. After 24 hours, let's say somebody else offers me Kirk Cousins in 2 first, and I accept that instead. You have one more chance to come over the top. You have an hour to come over the top into this rule, or listen, we're all big boys. Bad trades happen.
Pretty cool, actually. I mean, I don't know that I love it, but it's fucking awesome.
Listen, it saved a couple stuff. We had that Daniel Jones for a first and Patrick Mahomes happened 2 years ago, and we had that the trade not safety net, but the trade match rule saved us because someone came in with it was something like that, Kirk and 2. So that's
pretty cool. I mean, it's a lot of work, right?
It's a lot of work. I'm the commissioner. It's definitely a lot of work, but we don't get a lot of people coming over the top. One time, like I had, someone needed a spot starter, and it was like Boston Scott for a 4th. Someone else came over the top with a 3rd. Like that kind of stuff happens too.
Yeah.
But
pretty interesting actually, because then which 3rd is better? If I come over the top with my 3rd, is my 3rd better than his 3rd, or is that a match?
That's so the guy who is negotiating say, you know what, I'm taking Scott's 3rd because I believe he's the worst team and I want his 3rd. So
got it.
You have the option.
He can determine.
Yeah, he can give you a worse trade. Obviously, that's collusion if it's a worse trade, but it's just one of the.
Yeah, that would be pretty skeptical. But I guess Daniel Jones and 2 firsts versus Kirk Cousins and 1 first. If he took the 1 first, you'd be like, what is going on? But maybe values Kirk Cousins.
There it is.
Wow, that's pretty fucking cool.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't hate it. A lot of work.
Yeah, no, it's not as bad as you think. There's always one person that leaves pissed off though. Oh,
that's
this
right.
is BS, man.
Exactly. At least one person. That's right.
Well, because he offered this trade, I spent time making this trade, and then so are there any other dynasty rules that I wouldn't call them must-haves in your league, but if you would like to see, whether it's playoff format, what's something that you advise dynasty players to implement a rule that might be just a little bit outside the standard league settings?
I'll think about that as I answer with this. I like half-point PPR and half-point first down. So I do like that. That's how this league is set up. I don't like full PPR because, just Nyheim Hines, Tariq Cohen's, these guys, James White, they're like as valuable as Nick Chubb. You're like, come on, man, this is ridiculous. I always say, like, Nick Chubb runs for 2 yards on 4th and 1. It's a huge play, and Nick Chubb can do that. Nyheim Hines ain't getting it. And it's like, that conversion is important. In the game of football, what's more important than converting? It's so important, and we don't put any points for first down, but it's 3rd and 18, and Nyheim Hines catches a 7-yard dump-off, and that's worth like 1.7, and Nick Chubb's first down was worth 0.2. Come on. So
Chris Thompson was a top 12 running back one year.
So for me, the 1.7 becomes 1.2, and the 0.2 becomes 0.7. They become so much more close. And actually, I would argue it should be somehow more that he converted. So I can't even put enough on first down. I love that. I mean, for me, that's the way to score it. It just makes good players worth more. Guys who are actually in on important downs and making big plays. You're watching a game and, Wes Welker used to do this with Tom Brady, catch a 3-yard pass on 4th and 2. You're like, it's a good play. It's like huge because the defense is tight. Everything's there. That first down is huge. So converting those first downs happens for good players, and garbage time is garbage time. So that's a big one. I don't know about any other rules. I mean,
how do you stop? Any? Yeah, I was going to ask, I just want to actually, I zipped past it. We were talking about, trading for running backs. Do you advise teams? I always tell teams that are, a running back away, trade for old running backs that nobody wants. This year, Joe Mixon, James Conner, those guys.
James Conner's a great one, yeah.
You can give a first-round pick on the clock for Derrick Henry right now.
You
can do it. It can be done.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I'd even say, one of the builds you're going to want to have is to sort of collect a bunch of running backs to, cheaper ones,
Jerome Ford types.
Yeah, because you never know. And so you kind of have some guys that could kind of Jerick McKinnon, last year was one of those guys.
Team. He's on your team. Yeah.
I drafted him. I thought, look, at the end of the day, what are you doing? I mean, he could be an actual point scorer. So I look at it a little bit like that too. What are you buying when you're buying a player, even in a startup? Are you buying value or are you buying points? Because or both, right? CeeDee Lamb, value and points. Jerick McKinnon, points. There's no value in Jerick McKinnon. There's just points,
That's a good point. I want to underline that, right? It's like, what are you? I see. I think I had that thought, but I've never verbalized it or actually processed it.
Yeah.
Each pick, it's
Jaden
almost
Reed, all value. There's no points. Right. I don't know. I mean, he could be nothing. I love Jaden Reed, but I'm not buying any fantasy points. I'm buying potential value. That's I don't know what are we getting with him. It could be Sky Moore. It could be Christian Watson, right? Yeah.
I promised you that I wouldn't keep you longer than an hour, so I have we're gonna have to have you back on the time because I have a laundry list of questions for you. But commissioner question, because there's a lot of fantasy football commissioners out there. What do you do? What's the best backstop to stop tanking in your league? Tough question.
I don't have a problem with tanking.
So here's the situation. Let's say you and I are playing and you're out of it. You're tanking.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm in I'm in 6th place and the guy that is in 7th needs me to lose. Yeah. So you're not screwing me. Great. But it's
you weren't going to beat him anyway. His team sucks.
Right.
So now at the end of the day, if you just go max points for draft
explain
picks,
is that like a best ball type of scoring?
So yeah, basically instead of having, your actual record, whoever finishes in 12th gets the first pick and 11th because
right.
It's whomever. Yeah, it's max points for it's in Sleeper.
Yeah,
and it's basically if you would have never set a lineup, what would have been your best lineup each week? It's basically your best ball results, if you will. So the only way to really make that go down is to trade away any of your good players. Because if you have good players scoring points on your bench, it goes against your max points for, which really is how you should be tanking anyway. Amari Cooper right now. I'm in a rebuild where I have Amari. There's another one, buying points. You're not buying value with Amari, but he's probably going to have a big year with Deshaun. He's their wide receiver 1, with very little competition. I mean, Elijah Moore, whatever. Who wants Amari Cooper? Certainly not me in a rebuild.
Right.
And in a max points 4, I could bench him. I can put him wherever his points are going to count for me, So ultimately, that's the best way.
How about
I
this?
don't have a problem with tanking so much. I've seen teams tank and they get the 101. It's like, okay, good for you. Whatever. Bijan's not going to make your team. You're still fucked. I mean,
right.
You know what I mean?
Somebody thinks they have a great pick. They end up taking Zach Wilson in a superflex and leaving Jamar Chase on the board.
Bingo. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time.
That's right. So I don't have a big problem with it. I mean, there are some big prize 101s, next year, Caleb and Bijan and all the rest of it. So there are teams that will tank, and I'm in a league with JJ Zacharyson, the Dynasty Game Theory Invitational, and he literally messaged me, goes, what about the tanking situation? Because I'm going to tank. And I said, and we changed the rule to max points 4. Right. So that way he wouldn't be compelled to tank because he's not going to win it all. He's like, just so you know, if we keep it this way, I'm going to tank. And I'm like, you're right. Let's change it. Are we all good? Everybody was cool with it. We changed it immediately. So now it's max points 4 in that league. And it should have been that way all along. And that's probably what I should have done.
So
I just don't mind tanking because it's like, hey, if that's what you think you need to do best for your team, then do it.
Yeah. Here's what we came up with in that same league, and I'll try to make it quick. You tell me what you think. So it's a little more complicated because max point 4 is easy. You just click the setting on.
Correct.
So, but also it's like then you're getting the points for Donovan Peoples-Jones, who you would never start, and the week that he goes off, that counts, and that's not a reflection of how good my team is. It's just me, So here's what we do: the bottom
it's not perfect. I agree.
Right? It's not perfect. So there's flaws in all these things.
100%.
So this system I'm about to tell you, some people hate it, but it is fair. All 6 teams that don't make the playoffs go not into a weighted lottery, Scott. They go into a real lottery. So the 6th team, the worst team, and the 6th team, they all get the same chance, and we pull out of a quote hat,
right?
And that's the lottery. And we do 5 lotteries, 1 for each round. So you can have the 1-1, the 2-3, the 3-5, the 4-2. So that's how we. And again, and then we also incentivize winning by giving a $50 weekly prize. So even if you have a bad team, you could still get lucky and win the 51 week. So you're incentivized to set your lineup, and doesn't matter if you're the 7th seed and miss the playoffs or the 1 seed, you have an equal chance for the 101. That's how we combat it in our leagues.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. I had one where it was fun. If you do one league, you can do stuff like this that I'm about to explain. I've changed it this year because it was so much work. I had it where you were rewarded a certain number of points for your position of finish. So in other words, if you finished last, you got more points, and then so forth and so on. But then you also got points awarded for, and it was like the last 4 weeks of the regular season, total points scored in those 4 weeks. So of the non-playoff teams, whoever was scoring the most points down the stretch also got points.
That's good.
That would be sort of would kind of go together. It was interesting. It created some results that I didn't love. Everybody was trying, but still some of these shitty teams would end up with the 4th pick, and you're like, well, that kind of sucks. He was trying, and he still sucks, and he got the 4th pick. Right. So it didn't. I think I've seen a few tanking teams, and the best part about tanking teams is that all the other league members get to berate them.
Right. Oh yeah. No, I'm all for organized chaos in the chat. By the way,
public shaming.
Yeah, public shaming, organized chaos, even a little bit of vitriol, as long as nobody's going to quit the league. Think about this. Dana White used to make the joke that the reason UFC is so popular is you go to a football game and a fight breaks out, everyone's watching the fight. They say, screw the football game.
Yeah.
So fighting is fun to watch.
No doubt. We love it. Yeah.
I'm going to spring a question on you, and you did not know I was going to ask you this. So if you don't have an answer, just say, hey, I'll think about it. But is there a real NFL rule that you think that you would either implement or change? Something that, while you're thinking it through, anything small. Okay, so what if you were Commissioner Jax Falcone? You get one rule change. What's it going to be?
No more onside kick. If you get to do the thing where you go for it. The 4th down and 15. I love that rule. That's the smartest, most fun rule.
Explain it. Not everyone understands what you're talking
about. So, look, you're instead of an onside kick, you get the ball. I forget where it is. I think it's at the 25 or your own 25 or 30, and you have to make 15 yards. It's like 4th and 15. That's the play.
Wow.
Go ahead, convert, motherfucker. If you want the ball, you convert 4th and 15, and you get the ball.
I love that.
Why
aren't they doing that?
Do you realize how exciting that play would be?
Oh my God, that's that's a good one. You know what? I asked that question to a lot of people. I think that's the best one so far. That's a great one. Yeah. But how about the teams that want to sneak an onside kick with the opening?
You still can.
You still can. So you have a choice which one to do.
Yeah, the kickoff is kind of stupid now too. They're kind of messing that up. So at the end of the day, maybe that's the way to get rid of the kickoff altogether. Is you get to choose. Hey, do you want to do this 4th and 15, or you want to give it to him at the 25? I don't know. I'm just talking out loud here,
Yeah. The one that I always say, the rule change, it's a little nuanced, but okay. So if you're on your own 4 yard, if you're on your own 6 yard line, right, and you get a holding penalty, what's the penalty? What are they right now? What's
2 yards? Yeah.
Right. It's half the distance, right?
Right.
So that's a 3 yard penalty. What they should do is just move the first down marker back 10 yards.
Ooh, I like that one.
Right. So it's a 10 yard penalty.
That's pretty badass.
So anything inside the 10, it goes the opposite direction. Not
Brilliant. Love it.
All right, cool.
And you could even do, if you don't want to, you could even do 5 yards instead, because it's like 10 seems a lot, maybe because you're stuck in your own end zone.
Holding is a 10-yard penalty, though.
No, I understand what you're saying, but like if you're on your 1 and you hold, it's like now we're third and 20 from the 1 is harder than 3rd and 20 from the 42. You know what I mean? It's like you have more space and stuff. So
so it needs a little massaging, but that's
I love it nonetheless. Yes, 100% love it.
And and for baseball, I always say why make a batting order? Just say like Mike Trout gets 4 at bats. You can use them whenever you want.
I've seen this one. I love it.
Yeah, right. Like again, this is an
well in
original
baseball.
thought.
It also is great too, because you're like, dude, bases loaded, Trout. You're up, man. You're up. The bases are loaded. You're batting again. Like we bat you twice in a row. If you struck out, you're up again too.
Right. The logic that I had heard was that if you need a big shot, you give it to Steph Curry. If you need a fourth, it's 4th and 1, and everything's on, you go to Patrick Mahomes, to Travis Kelce. Yeah. Why in a big spot is the 8th guy on the order hitting?
Yes. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I like that. Who watches baseball though?
Not me. That's good. I do it. I have to do a lot of baseball content. So even though I'm a super casual, I don't know baseball that well at all. But it's interesting working with people that are so passionate about it. So
I was passionate about baseball up until about 20 years ago. Yeah,
with the '86 Mets was basically where I left off.
Fuck you.
Yeah, right. You're the Sox guy, a Boston guy.
Look in the background, you see the Sox.
Yes. Oh, very good. Cool. Well, let's tell everyone one more time. Jax Falcone. Scott is doing a podcast on the Player Profiler Network. Does that start this week?
It was last week, so this week, yeah.
So, because I heard the last podcast you did with Chuck on your network. So, is it on both networks?
It's on both.
That's why. Okay, so
it'll be on both.
Okay, so you can get it on either. Your your Twitter handle is in the video and audio description below.
Again, at Dino Game Theory.
At Dino Game Theory, and anyone that loves Dynasty Fantasy Football and really wants more than the 101 level. This is more than the 202. This is like real deep game theory. Very riveting conversation. You said you have a whole bunch of guests on there. This is the podcast for you. Most common question I get is, what podcast do you listen to? This is the one.
Thanks,
this
man.
one, Mac,
Appreciate it.
Absolute truth. So check that out. We'll see everybody next week. If you have any questions about any of the topics or players we talked about today, you can Twitter DM any of us, or if you want to check out the $250 entry board, that's also in the video description below. We'll see everybody next week. Good luck. Yep. There you go. Roast them. Tell them how bad that draft was. And everyone else, we'll see you next week with another Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast.